Hello, hello, welcome, and thank you for tuning into the Liminal Pathways Podcast. I am your host, Sarah, and in this podcast, we talk about astrology, history, the human experience, how everything is all connected, patterns. I have solo episodes where I talk about the astrological transits that are impacting us. And I like to bring in guests from all walks of life, all ages, all genders. And today we have a very special guest. I do want to give a shout out to my friend, Dr. Andrew David Rimby of the Ivory Tower Boiler Room podcast for recommending this guest to me, as well as Joseph A. Federico for getting the ball rolling. So today I have on Harrison Viers Newberry. Harrison Viers Newberry has spent decades searching for life's deepest truths. After early success in corporate America, he faced unimaginable loss, losing his entire family in quick succession. Struggling with grief and alcoholism, he nearly gave up before finding salvation through a spiritual awakening that completely transformed his life. Drawing from his inner journey, Harrison rebuilt himself, launching a successful nationwide consulting business, and later finding lasting love with his wife of over 35 years. His search for enlightenment took him across the Andes and into the Amazon, where he studied the ancient teachings of the Q'ero people of Peru. After losing his right foot in an accident, Harrison again turned tragedy into purpose, devoting himself fully to writing and research. Through this work, he uncovered profound insights into human happiness and the spiritual evolution of humanity. Today, his mission is to share those discoveries and guide others toward the lasting peace and joy he finally found within. So, without any further ado, I am honored and humbled to introduce our guest, Mr. Harrison Viers Newberry. All right, Harrison, for taking the time to come on and speak with us today.
I'm honored to be here.
It's an honor to have you. So, before we get into some of your literature, I wanted to ask about your sun, moon, and rising. You had told me that you are a Gemini sun, a Gemini moon, and a Capricorn rising. Before I go into this, may I ask if you have ever had an astrology reading before?
Not not for many, many years. Frankly, it's not that I'm disinterested. It just hasn't been an avenue that I was led to. You know,
Hmm.
uh, I know there's a lot of validity to it, but that's about the extent of my knowledge.
Very nice. So thank you very much for entrusting me with your birth date and time. So it's interesting that you were born on a new moon in Gemini. I look at new moons as the planting of the seeds, a beginning of a cycle, and the beginning of a cycle that you're in specifically having to do with communication, as Gemini is the planet of communication. Mercury rules both Gemini and Virgo. Gemini is that mutable air sign that seeks mental stimulation, conversation. Makes a lot of sense that you are taking the time to be on my podcast and many other podcasts. communication is very important for you and your soul's evolution and journey.
I've done it for all my life,
Mhm.
basically.
Wow. And
You
it's all,
mentioned cycle. That's leans back to the fact that the Earth is in cycles. We've been told that civilization began some 5,500 years ago, and that was it. And it's been a linear progression since that time, and we're at the pinnacle. But that's not the case. And science has proven that out now. There's been many, many, many cycles, and we are on the threshold of a major, major shift that began a few years ago, particularly in 2012, which was highlighted by the Mayan prophecy and will continue until 2030, 2035. But
yes,
to a lot of people, it's like the end of the world. Life is dry. But to people who are awake, it's an exciting time. I'm very excited about what's coming because we are waking up.
mhm,
The whole world, millions of people are awakening that things aren't quite as what we've been told they are,
yes,
and realizing that. But the beauty of it is science is correlating all of this with, peer-reviewed science.
yes. Harrison, I have to say, I love how you just dove right into that and you touched on a lot of questions I was going to ask, a lot of literature I've been taking in, and that talk about cycles. And as you were talking, I'm a Virgo rising, also ruled by Mercury, I need to write everything down, otherwise I'll forget it. You were talking about 5,500 years ago, and my mind immediately went to the flood myths that we see around the world and in ancient civilizations, how every ancient civilization around 5,500, 6,000 years ago, there's this story of this cataclysmic flood, this cataclysmic event. And 5,500 years ago was approximately the time of the Neolithic Revolution, where on a large scale, right, human beings went from primarily hunting and gathering, being nomadic, following the food, to the rise of subsistence agriculture because of the rise of agriculture, planting crops. And through that, you have more sedentary lifestyles, right? People have a food surplus, they're having more children. And this historian, Jared Diamond, makes the argument that the Neolithic Revolution around 6,000 years ago, coinciding with the last time Saturn and Neptune conjuncted at 0 degrees, the world Aries point, which is where Saturn and Neptune had a conjunction on February 20th. And the astrology of February I noticed well before February 2026, and then seeing events play out, I'm like, eclipse, Mercury retrograde, Saturn Neptune conjunction. This is like as above, so below. So I really like that you talked about the Earth cycles. And another thing that comes to me is that concept of the Kali Yuga. Are you familiar with that?
With what?
Kali Yuga.
Not really.
So, real quick, the Kali Yuga is this fourth and final epoch in the Hindu cosmological cycle, characterized by profound
Oh,
moral.
okay. Yeah,
Yes,
I've heard of that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yes. So, as you're talking, like everything is making sense. And then I'm listening to an audiobook, The Pleiadian Agenda by Barbara Handclough, that also talks about December 21st, 2012, the Mayan calendar. Would you like to talk a little bit about that date?
Well, first of all, my book, Revelations.
Yes.
A lot of the information in this book came from a group of beings from the Pleiades star system,
Hmm.
uh, specifically from around the star Degeta. They're humanoid. If they walk down the street, they look just like you and me, you know. And even our government has now come out, many, many, many members of Congress, senators, scientists, intelligence officers, and said, we're not alone in the universe, and we're being visited, and those visits are increasing by several races, but they don't tell you what they say. But I do in my book. Okay. Now, they've been here all along, but they came in great force in 1952, but in a much, much larger force in 2008. 18,000 of them in multiple ships, and they're still here to this day. But the question was, why 2008? Well, what they told us, and this has been proven out, Dr. Judy Wood said that the 9/11 attacks, well, the planes definitely hit the World Trade Towers, the Pentagon, no question about that. But there was a weapon of some sort that had to have been used because there was no debris. It was dustified. And the Tibetans said that the cabal used this as a heating up and what they were planning to do. And this is why they returned. You've heard of the New World Order.
Could you explain to anyone listening about the New World Order?
Well, I don't, it's something that's planned by the one percenters, a group of negative and evil people uh, with more money than God that run everything, including most of the world's governments. But they planned to eliminate a large percentage of the Earth's population. And the Tibetans stopped it, but it's still not off. They're still working toward it. And they were going to use the 9/11 or the December 21st, 2012, because that was a date that was, and that year was viewed more than any other year in history. I mean, Y2K was a biggie, but that year was viewed more than any other year in history with anticipation. And since that time, we've been in the 3D, the third density of consciousness. But from that point forth, we are now at the edge of the fourth density. And they're here to help us ascend into the fifth density. The world, the universe is in the fifth density. It's only Earth that's been artificially held in the 3D.
Wow. Thank you.
From the moon, by a technology that also generates the Van Allen radiation belts. We're the only planet with these Van Allen belts. We're the only planet. But Earth is really 5D as well as everything in the universe outside of, of the non-spiritual world, of course. But we can't see beyond the 3D. But the 5D is here to affect us. There's all kinds of creatures, some beautiful, some scary as all get out, from what I've been told. We just can't see them, but they're here to affect us. We say perception is reality, right? We've all heard that a million times.
Indeed.
Well, if you take a ceiling fan and you look up and say it's got 4 blades, you could see the 4 blades. But when you turn it on and turn it on higher, they become blurred. You can't see if there's 3, 4, 5 blades. If you turn it on very, very high, it'll vanish. You can't see them at all. They're there. You know they're there, but you can't see them. And why? Because frequency. It's running at a higher frequency than what we are able to see. And that's what's happening in our reality around us. We can't see beyond the frequency that we are, but we are waking up. We are rising, and we've got the ability to rise above what the artificial suppression is and go into the 5D. And once we do, the instant we step into the 5th density of consciousness, we will understand everything. Everything. And
thank you.
the lies that we've been told for thousands of years.
Harrison, thank you so much. Can I just pause real quick because you have given a treasure trove of information, and I just want to walk it back a little bit because I'm sure that my viewers, my listeners, and myself, I am interested. I have Googled you, I've listened to a couple of your podcasts. Would you mind telling us a little bit about, I guess, your origin, your lore, a little bit about your early childhood and upbringing, and how this all came to be, please?
Well, I grew up in Virginia, in the country on a farm, very, very close-knit family. I struggled with asthma as a child, badly. But I guess I outgrew it, as they say. And I went to college, married my college sweetheart. And along the short of the story, I was doing great professionally. I was growing, I was making a lot of money. Both my parents died 8 months apart, and it just wiped me out. I was devastated. I was the youngest of 3 kids, and the last one to leave home. Before I was over that, my wife was diagnosed with cancer at age 29. And about the time we found out there was nothing left the doctors could do, she wasn't going to make it. A week after that, my only brother, who was a lot older than me, dropped dead of a heart attack. 6 months later, my wife died in my arms. I was suicidal. I mean, it almost destroyed me. And I crawled into alcoholism. Took me 2 years to snap out of that. And that's when my journey began. And I wrote a book called Shining Bear. And the angels called him Shining Bear. This is a true story. I ended up, I got off the alcohol. I haven't drank since mid-80s. And I eventually stepped onto the shamanic path, under study and working with and through the lineage of the Peru, which are part of the Quechua of what we call the Inca. I had a mentor, Dr. Alberto Villoldo, and I traveled in and out of Peru and the Amazon jungle, and I had some incredible things happen, just incredible. but they awakened me to a lot of the things. I come to understand that we are energy, and everything is energy and consciousness. From that point forth, I didn't understand it. I didn't have the language at that time that I do today, but I understood what it meant. And in this book, it's also, I remember a person that I knew said, I feel like I got to take notes, because it's step by step on how to build yourself from the inside out. And one thing led to another, and I became interested in, I mean, most people, reasonably educated people or open-minded people feel like there's got to be other life in the universe, and I started looking into it. And you didn't hear any of this in mainstream media, but you don't have to look just below the surface, and there is a plethora of knowledge and information on this stuff out there that's just now, and since 2017 becoming publicized.
For
But
sure.
the bulk of it still isn't. They're not going to tell us the truth, but I will.
Yeah. Thank you, Harrison. I will put your books in the show notes. I will link them, how people can find them. And I can't wait to really dive deeper into that. And your story of alchemizing grief and pain and trauma and the shamanic path, I feel like is something that so many people these days of all ages, from all walks of life, can really resonate with. So thank you for sharing that.
I've had many, many people tell me that this is the best book I've ever written, that Hollywood should make a movie out of it. I've had that, God, how many times? I had people calling me, grown men, in tears after having just read this book. I just had a fellow I've never met before text me that he just finished reading it a second time.
Yeah.
People are reading it multiple times because of the content, what they can take away from it.
Oh, absolutely. That's me with the
I
Pleiadian
hadn't been promoting it though.
You gotta read it again. Sometimes, yeah, the deeper meanings. But it's just so powerful that the alchemizing the shadow, like what are we going to do? Just let the pain and the trauma and grief take us over? Like again, like I talk about my own healing journey. It's okay, feel your feelings and the deeper meaning, I guess, of that. Is that something that you want to talk about?
Well, when I wrote the book, it was like going back and reliving it. It was very traumatic for me to write that book. But what I realized was it took me to a place that I thought, I'd lost everybody that mattered to me. I didn't care about money anymore. I had made a lot of money, but I could care less.
Yeah.
I would have given anything to have one of my family members back.
Mm-hmm.
So I started thinking, why am I still here? I started asking questions that most people ask at some point in their life, but I was still a lot younger, and started asking these questions much earlier. Who am I? Why am I here? What's my purpose? What is this? What's life? There's got to be something I'm missing. It can't be just about making money.
I've been asking those questions as a 5-year-old, I swear. What are we doing here on this floating rock? Why am I in this? It's because we're younger. We remember our past lives, our soul, and then society kind of beats that out of us. Like, you need to get this job. You need to make money. You need to do this. You need to do that. And we forget who we are.
Yeah, exactly. And we have forgotten. Now we have to be told. The Tibetan said, You're not grown-ups,
Hmm.
any of you. You have to be told what's right and what's wrong, how to act, how to behave, what to do, what to think, what to believe. And our
Hmm.
beliefs, whatever it is that we believe, and quantum science has proven this, is mirrored in the world around us. We create, we manifest
We
our
really
own
do.
reality.
Hmm.
Now, one person, may not make that a big difference except to themselves. But what if you got millions of people believing the same
Hmm.
lies? And this is what this evil race of beings that came to this planet thousands of years ago did. They
Oh, yeah.
started 12,500 years ago.
When you talk about this evil group, are you by any chance referring to the Anunnaki?
Well, they're tied into it, but I'm talking about the
The
reptilians.
reptilians. Thank you for clarifying.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the reptilians and any possible tie-in with the Anunnaki and the Nephilim?
Well, the Anunnaki, people don't know what they look like.
Mm,
And
right.
I personally think they were part of the reptilian race.
Okay.
And I mean, that's a whole other line of thinking, it really is. But what happened is the reptilians came to this planet, and the Egyptian god Thoth, that wrote as above, so below, uh, talked about how an evil race would come to a peaceful planet and infiltrate them and manipulate, brainwash, mind control the indigenous peoples of that planet to manifest the reality that suited their own selfish agenda. And what they wanted, they feed on fear. They're highly intelligent. They live, I mean, they're responsible for us living short lives, but they live, I don't know how long, thousands, a couple of thousand years at least, and they were very patient. And they introduced religions. Now, I know that's a touchy subject for people.
Go for it. The Abrahamic religions. I'm all ears.
Uh, I started on this earlier. If you want to control what the world is, you've got to get people into a hive mind, all believing the same things, marching in lockstep. One person, you or me, you know, we can have our own beliefs, but whatever we manifest is not going to be necessarily seen by the whole world, even our own community or our family. But if you go back thousands of years and you introduce a belief system, and the Tibetans say that the three religions of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam are variations of the same lies designed to separate us from the divine.
I thank you, first of all, for sharing that. That is, I believe that for a long time regarding Abrahamic religions, fear-based, patriarchal, that sky daddy type of God.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting looking at, yes, how Christianity and Islam, right, get their roots from the Old Testament, which is, the Hebrew Bible and the Torah, and how, to this day, right, you see, in the US, like the Department of War and the Iran, and there's so many things that I can say, and the holy war rhetoric, all of
Healing in
that.
the
And it's
name of God. I mean, you got to be kidding. That's like the biggest oxymoron in history, isn't it? Healing in the name of God?
like that Rage Against the Machine song. Are you familiar?
No,
I'll send it to you.
please do.
Healing in the name of. But yes, to
Well,
sever us from the God
I
within
can
us.
tell you're awake more than a lot of people that I've talked with.
I also don't think I'm a human.
Well, you may not. Yeah, you're in a human body, and
Yeah.
so am I. But I am like 99% sure I am a starseed. We
Me
did
too.
not.
And I
We
don't
did
talk about
not
it
from
for a few
monkeys,
years.
Sarah.
Yeah. Yeah, because I also feel,
Humanity,
yes, go ahead.
humanity showed up some 200,000 years ago, intact.
Hmm.
It's the way we are now. We are from the same ancestry as the Tibetans.
To get me.
The human form is the most prevalent in this galaxy. All
Hmm.
we've been shown alien wise is the grays, or some, that's all they see. But the human form is by far more pervasive within the galaxy, and we all originated, our ancestry had its origins from the Lyrian
Hmm.
constellation, Vega, and we are star seeds. But we're
Hmm.
star seeds because from Lyra, these civilizations spread all over. There are thousands upon thousands of planets and many, many civilizations. Why do we have so many different races on this planet? Because we're all from different star seeds. And they say that's why they're here in force, so many of them, because they have to take care of their own. We are cousins to them. And we didn't arrive, we did not evolve from apes. Evolution is a real thing in many life forms, but not in the human. And
Hmm.
Charles Darwin's theory the origin of
Yes, the
species,
origin of species.
uh, it was a theory. And even he said, if you read it, that if we could prove just one system within the human body could not have gradually come about through a series of changes, evolutionary changes, that his theory would fall apart.
Hmm.
Well, he wrote that book and published it in 1859.
Hmm.
Didn't know anything about DNA. They didn't hardly even know what cells were.
That's crazy too, just as a history person to layer on. At that time, he's writing The Origin of Species, adding onto that concept of social Darwinism. That was very pervasive at that time, right? That era of global imperialism. The Berlin Conference, for example, was in 1884, where European countries were carving up the continent of Africa for their own imperialistic purposes, right? The Belgians in the Congo, for example, King Leopold. So it's interesting that ping just came to me because you mentioned Darwin and then this idea of social Darwinism, which is steeped in racism and eugenics. Yeah.
Well, it's if you look at the science, it's been proven wrong again and again and again. Survival of the fittest. Yeah, every man for himself, every woman for herself, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
We know that it's through cooperation
Yep.
we
The Age
thrive.
of Aquarius, the Aquarian ideal of humanity, sharing, humanitarianism.
I'm glad you just said that because that was one of the things I wanted to
The
ask
Age
you.
of Aquarius? Yes.
The age of Aquarius.
So, one second.
500. What I want to tell you is a history lesson about prophecy
Hmm.
that goes back. We talk about, in Christianity, book of Revelations. So I wrote Revelations, different kind of Revelations, but John of Patmos, or John the divine, they're saying that he got his from Isis of Egypt, the goddess Isis, and the prophecy of Isis and Osiris. And there are a lot of similarities, and they could not possibly have known one another or had any contact, but they're very close together. And they talk about there's a symbol with 4 faces. Are you familiar with this? Taurus. We now have the eagle, but it was Scorpio at the time. And Aquarius is the one with the man and the water. And Leo.
Yeah. The fixed signs.
Yeah. And they said these 4 faces, and they're talked about in Ezekiel, and John of Patmos talks about it. And when one of these signs shows up, buckle up, because you're in for a ride. And we are at the age of Aquarius. And it's the only one with a man and with water. And water is the only thing that activates DNA. And they think they're finding the elixir of life, which will extend human life. That's what I'd heard this before, but ironically, I just revisited this piece yesterday, and that's why it was on my mind.
Nothing is ever accidental. And it's very interesting too, astrologically, Aquarius is archetypically, even though it's an air sign, it's known as the water bearer, someone who holds water, someone who bears water. So I thought that was a very interesting tie. And a lot of people think that Aquarius is a water sign, but it's not.
Yeah.
But it's the water bearer.
Well, at any rate, it ties back into the shift that we're in the midst of.
Yeah.
And we're feeling it right now.
So I wanted to tie that, again, everything that we're talking to is so connected. I want to go back to, you mentioned the reptilians, this evil race. And I was wondering if, from your perspective, you can talk more about this with, the release of, the millions of the Epstein files and how nothing is really being done to help victims.
Help fix what? Yeah, you lost me a little bit there.
I'm sorry. The Department of Justice released heavily redacted files implicating leaders in the U.S., both in the Democratic and the Republican Party, spiritual leaders such as, Deepak Chopra and, Stephen Hawking. He's a scientist. Bill Gates, all these highly influential people in society that are being accused of doing heinous things. I guess my question is, how does that tie into this reptilian evil race? You're also talking about like the elites, the 1%, and we're all aware of it. We're all conscious of it, but how is this going to tie into this 5D new Earth, so to speak? I know that that's like a very big question.
Yeah, well, it is. That's kind of a mouthful.
Yeah. Welcome to my brain.
Well, the first place is the reptilian race, as I said, they've been here. The Tibetans say 40 to 50,000 years on this planet. Sumerian tablets say 250,000 years, but the Tibetans say that's wrong. They've been here 40 to 50,000 years. And 12,500 years ago, which we haven't talked about, what started all this, there was Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
The reptilians were here, and there was a planet called Tiamat that no longer exists. Remember in the first Star Wars movie, the planet was destroyed? Well, it wasn't in a galaxy far, far away. It was right here in our solar system. And we also know that Mars has a nuclear signature. They found high levels of xenon-129 on Mars. And Mars was nuked. And Tiamat, which was a large planet, much larger than Earth, it was a water planet. And the reptilians went there and started to set up a dummy base and started sending out dummy electromagnetic signals, knowing that the Federation of Planets would come to investigate, which they did. And it was an ambush. And this horrendous war ensued. Great losses, very bloody affair on both sides. And most all of the reptilians' technology was destroyed. And out of desperation, the Federation of Planets blew up Tiamat. And the solar system was a mess. There was debris everywhere. They couldn't fly. It wasn't safe. So what they did was they knew the reptilians were on Earth, and they trapped them here. And they trapped them here by installing this 3D matrix, and particularly the Van Allen belts, because you can't go through those belts without technology or without ascending to a higher consciousness.
I'm sorry, real quick. Do you mind explaining what the Van Allen belt is for anyone who's listening?
They're an energetic belt. Some people call them the radiation belts, but I'm not a physicist, but, they're generated, a hologram is not just light, okay? If it's powerful enough, it generates force fields. It's a force field that disallows anything to go through it without high technology, and if you're a person, without ascending to a higher level of consciousness. And those Van Allen belts are the barrier. Everything in this universe outside of our Van Allen belts is 5D, which is kind of misleading because Earth is also still 5D, but from the moon, inside the moon, there's digital computers. And that's what they said. They're not anything. I mean, this is this old technology that are run by nuclear generators, which are very dangerous. And there was 12 of them, and 8 of them have failed. So there's only 4 left. But they used the moon as a gigantic projector, and it projects a hologram over Earth. But mostly what it does is it suppresses our frequency.
Are you talking about the moon matrix?
Yeah. The moon matrix exists. We are a matrix inside of a matrix. Science knows that the universe is a matrix now, but I have not yet heard them talk about it. Maybe they have, somebody probably has, about a matrix inside of a matrix, or a dream inside of a dream.
Yeah. That clocks, yeah.
But the reptilians were left here on Earth. They didn't have any technology. They couldn't get to the moon But they did in the 1960s, and they hardened the matrix. Now, I'm not real sure what that means, but they made it very dense.
It's interesting. Yeah, a lot of people.
Based energy is very dense, dark energy, which is what they feed on. It's food for them.
Mm.
It's literally food for these beings. And they have powerful psionic abilities, mind controlling abilities. And they started by introducing false ideas to humanity. There wasn't that many of us. As a matter of fact, earlier in this conversation, you were talking about the flood. Well, the water from Tiamat, a lot of it came here as ice and ended up, and this is where the flood came from. Mm-hmm. And the pole shift of Earth. So there wasn't that many humans here. So the reptilians started introducing false ideas very gradually, very patiently. And then about 1400 BC. Now I'm going to tell you something that blew me completely out of the water. And I've never talked about this live in public, but I wrote it. They said Akhenaten, who was Pharaoh in Egypt, who had introduced the monotheism. It was solar worship, though, not a god, solar worship, Atonism, okay? The Egyptians finally had enough, and a coup was done, and they threw him out. They expelled him and all of his followers from Egypt, and they wandered the desert for 40 years, not knowing where to go. And they ended up at Mount Sinai.
It sounds very
familiar. And Akhenaten went up the mountain and met with the other reptilians and his king, and they made a plan. Akhenaten was Moses.
Wow.
Wow is right. And I was so taken aback by that. A real close friend of mine told me, he said, "Harry, I wouldn't write that book because it's going to blow people away." I grew up watching the Ten Commandments, Charlton Heston, in my era. And there's been other movies which I've also watched on Moses and the Ten Commandments. And I believe that with all my heart, with all my life. And it's taken me a long time to process this. However, there's a lot of suspicion because most of the Jewish faith originated from the book of Deuteronomy, which suddenly appeared somewhere around 600 BC at Solomon's temple. And they had a boy king, Josiah, I think it was, Josephus or Josiah, I think it's Josiah, the boy king, and he adopted this. But here's the thing, before then, the Jewish people had their ascension beliefs and were said to be meeting with ETs all the time and communicating with them. But when this book showed up, this boy king forced them into this belief system. And that's what is followed to this day. But here's the thing. It was supposed to be written by none other than Moses. And it was the Ten Commandments. Now, my question is, if that's true, you got to be kidding me. They didn't know about Moses. They didn't know about the Ten Commandments. And this is from 1400 to 1600. It's just, what's that, 800 years? And they knew nothing about it. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't add up. I still don't know, but I'm open to it now. And I was closed-minded about that for a long time. That was the hardest thing for me to overcome.
That Pandora's box, because we've been so conditioned in these Abrahamic patriarchal belief systems to never go against the teachings of the church, the mosque, the synagogue. I, not religious, but growing up under the Jewish faith, I always had a lot of questions, and I feel like when I asked questions and I pushed back on things, it was not very popular in institutions. Like, who is this young girl asking all of these philosophical and existential questions? Like, we just want her to shut up and, be a good little girl like everyone else. Like, you know what I mean?
March in lockstep.
I wasn't having that. And even as an adult, I cannot go lockstep. I have to question everything.
Well, see, it's sad that more people are not questioning, because the prophecies say, and I was told by a group of the Cairo, I don't know if you're familiar with the Cairo, but they had escaped Cusco, Peru, the ancient capital of the Inca Empire, at the time of the Spanish conquest in 1532. They left. They'd seen the coming of this in their visions, and they went up to one of their holy mountains, Awasangate, and lived for almost 500 years, and no one knew they were there. Even amongst the Quechua people, it was a myth. But it was prophesied that they would return at the time of Pachacuti, which is the tearing of the veil between this world and the next. Okay. Yeah. And I met with them many times, and they said the new shaman would come from the West. An author and researcher named Jay Widener was down there around the same time. And they told him, and they told me this too, but it's, that we in the U.S. would become a people of the heart versus the head. And it would proliferate worldwide, and this would make the change. Now, in my book, Rise of Human Perception, I talk about how in early 1990s, a French researcher discovered that we have over 40,000 sensory neurons in our heart. These are brain cells. The research continued, and we found that the heart, the cells there are 100 times more powerful than those of the brain, but also that they remember separately from the brain. We think separately from the brain with our heart. So the trick is to marry the two, bond the two together. And I give the methodology and the techniques on how to do this. And from the heart, you link to your higher consciousness, your soul, your spirit. And from there, you link to universal consciousness, knowledge, and wisdom. And as a British researcher said, the person who succeeds at this has access to knowledge and wisdom that'll make the local genius look like the town idiot. Because what we know here in the physical world, material world, is very limited compared to all the knowledge of the universe.
100%. We don't know jack. Like, we really don't. And I'm obsessed with knowledge, learning, whether that's books, intuitive stuff. It's like, learn. But it's like, what is the end goal? What is the end goal? Like, we're not going to learn everything, and we're not supposed to. And I feel like that's why I love the Akashic. Are you familiar with the concept of the Akashic records?
Oh, yes.
Yes, this infinite library of our soul.
Well, it's a physical location, though. Did you know that? The computers that I talked about on the moon record everything. And if you can access that, which evidently you must be able to, then you got your past lives. We haven't forgotten our past lives. They're in our spirit. But in our brains, we forgot. We can't remember. But once we access this, we can remember at least the last couple of lives. But yeah, the Akashic records are a very real thing. Very real thing. So, but I never got around. I was coming around a long way around to your question. We said it was
okay. Go for
it. The reptilians mated with humans. And one of the problems in getting rid of them is they're hard to detect. Some believe that, and I'm not so sure this is right, that kings and queens, the divine right of kings concept that came out of Mesopotamia and the Anunnaki, that they are reptilians.
I don't doubt that for a second. You talk about divine right of kings you see in ancient civil, Chinese dynasties, British royal family.
Yeah. A real close friend of mine, a guy I grew up with, is one of the most spiritual people I've ever known, told me a story. And I don't know where he got this, but he said he saw this from an interview with the late Lady Diana. And the reason that she had left, the reason she left Prince Charles at the time was because one morning she steps into his room and he appeared to her as a lizard.
Mm-hmm.
And it freaked her out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty wild story. If it had come from anybody else, I would have totally discounted it. But he was serious. He believes that is the truth. I don't know whether it is or not. But the point is, there is a way you can tell. If you get them angry, they get slit eyes, like a snake. But otherwise, they're hard to ferret out. But they have infiltrated governments, industries, everything that controls us. And we have been almost totally controlled. Mass media, I talked about the religions, but when radio came along, the television, now social media, with the internet, they've got a captive audience, and they tell us what to believe, what's right, what's wrong, how to act, how to dress, how to behave, what to do. Buy this and you'll be happy. You got to have this or you won't be. All these things we're being led around by the nose. But people like you that ask questions, and especially if you learn to listen within your heart.
Yup.
Go to the heart. The head has been programmed. See, when I heard all this information, Sarah, from the Tibetans, I'm like everybody else. I'm, even though I am a questioner and have always asked questions, still, I've been programmed like everybody else. You can't live without being affected. Even if you grew up Jewish, you're still affected by Christian teachings in this country anyway.
And the white Christian nationalism you see here in the United States, this evangelical second coming stuff that.
Well, the coming they're talking about may be a little different from what they expect. But I meant that facetiously.
Yeah.
But the ties back to the Karo people that said that we will become a people of the heart. Now,
And
I hope I've linked all that together about how powerful the heart is.
yes,
Scientists have measured that at least there is a force field from our heart that goes out at least 6 to 8 feet.
I believe it. I felt it.
Yeah,
I felt
but
it.
they don't know. Some other scientists said, well, how do you know that it's
You
6 to 8
just
feet?
know. You just know. And I love what you said about, the head, the heart, and sometimes how do you know things? I intuitively. It's not coming. My mind is a scary place to be. It does not stop. But it's like when you truly know something with a capital K, you are so sure about it, it just bypasses the logical mind. That's from the heart, baby.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's what I was getting to. When I got this information, my head wanted to reject it.
Oh,
Okay.
of course,
But
because we're always trying to make meaning of things.
it was resonating in my heart as truth.
Exactly.
And I couldn't let it
Exactly.
go. And then later I read, they said, the Tibetans told us, they said, most people will reject this
Yeah.
because of the programming, but that it would resonate in the hearts of what they called the key people. Now, I've never thought of myself as a key person, but basically starseeds.
Yeah. That's what you're talking about is exactly how I feel when I'm listening to your podcast episodes, when I'm listening to the Pleiadian agenda, which I feel like even if I were to listen to this, I've been on my spiritual journey my whole life, like really consciously since like honestly right before 2020. But I feel like the Pleiadian agenda, for example, if I would have listened to this 2 years ago, I've been like, what is this? What is this? But I'm listening to it, and yeah, my logical mind is trying to like fight things. I'm like, I need evidence. I need, but then my heart is like, this makes so much sense.
Yeah.
You're talking, I'm like, this makes so much sense. And, going back to the head and the mind and the media, which was, one of the questions that I had um, jotted down when we talk about media control that also, feeds on dark energy and fear and division and how, it's like the same like small handful of like companies, right, own the media, right, and are pitting people who love each other against each other. And how also news corporations, like addiction, right, like drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, whatever, you're going to have those bright light, this breaking news, everything's breaking. You're going to have debates that are going to serve your quote unquote side. And it's that dopamine hit that people need.
Yeah. We're creatures of habit.
Yes.
And, a person asked me, well, Harry, don't you use logic and reason in the head? Of course. I mean, we need our brain, we need our brains to function in these incarnations. So, no ifs, ands, and buts about that. But your brain is like a hard drive on a computer, it's a receiver. And this has been pretty well proven out. You program a computer, a good programmer programs a computer, right? Then you ask a question. The answer that is generated from the computer is based entirely upon the program.
Yep.
If it was programmed with lies and falsehoods, what are you going to get back with your logic and reason? But they can't program the heart.
Nope. The heart is sovereign. I'm like raising my voice because I'm getting passionate about it. Yeah.
The heart is listen to the heart. And to listen to the heart, and I've been saying this for years, even back in the story of Shining Bear, when I was evolving personally. I was in the Amazon at an ayahuasca ceremony. And it was a very long story, but a friend of mine who is a PhD professor at Emory University was there as my guard. And she said, the next morning, I kept saying, and I remember this, it's so darn simple. I can't believe it's so simple. And she said, what is so simple? And I said, life. And it's all based upon the practice of rigorous self-honesty.
Wow.
And I know that sounds like an oversimplification of everything. Above the temple of Delphi in Greece, it's inscribed, and this goes back, before the Common Era.
I have chills.
Know thyself.
Yes,
Know
I have
thyself.
goosebumps. I have my own Oracle of Delphi story that I'm not going to share right now, but I have goosebumps right now.
Yeah.
The Oracle of Delphi. Yes. Goosebumps.
The Oracle of Apollo just did a live review on my book.
Wow.
Literally, there's a person that goes, her handle is Oracle of Apollo.
I have chills. I have chills. I have my own personal story.
Know thyself, though. How do you do that?
It's that simple. It is that simple. It is literally that simple.
Yeah. You've got to go within yourself and in your own heart to know thyself. You won't get it out of the head. The head's packed with lies.
Exactly.
I need to say one thing, though.
Please.
I'm not attacking churches. I really not. There's a lot of truth in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Mm-hmm. There has to be truth. Otherwise, people won't believe it. People won't follow it.
I agree.
The dumbest of us, the ones that are the most unawakened, can sense truth at some level. But it's the dogma and the way they used it to control us.
Exactly. You can't do this.
God is a punishing God. God's going to get you for that.
Exactly. Or you see in the Middle Ages, right? The indulgences, right? People are giving the church money so that they go to heaven because they're so worried about being in eternal damnation.
Yeah. All lies. All lies.
Yep.
All lies. But yet there's still a lot of truth there. And so, somebody said, well, how do you know what to buy and what not to? And I said, well, you listen to your heart first.
We have our own in our hearts. We have our own connection with God in us. Yes.
And they taught you had to go through a priest. You can't have a direct connection with the Catholic faith with God. You got to get to him through a priest.
And because we're not sovereign. You need to go to someone in an institution who yields state power to tell you what you already know.
And give them money to boot.
No, yeah, exactly. It's nonsense.
Well, in
we as humans,
in the year about 1200, the Catholic Church ordered an attack on a group of people known as the Cathars.
Yes, the Cathars in France, southern France.
Southern France. Yep. They were Gnostics. And the church had sent some spies over there. One in particular, whose name escapes me, but he's well known through history. And he came back and told them that, what are you after these people for? They're better Christians than we have here in Rome. What they believed was that we are all born with a divine spark.
Yep.
Our soul, our spirit, which we know to be true. I mean, to me, I can't even believe that was ever even a question today, but back then it was a different matter. They killed maybe 100,000 men, women, children.
Yes.
Murdered them in the name of God.
Killing in the name of God, just like we were talking about earlier. And
I'm saying people talk about the Islamics.
Yes, and I'm also thinking about the Crusades too. the Holy War, and specifically that region of land, the Levant region, right? And the tie-ins to modern day, but with the Knights Templar and also some like Freemasonry things like regarding like the Temple of Solomon and all that stuff. Yeah.
Well, the Knights Templar, I've done some research on that, but that's a whole other ball game.
Yeah, we have 3 minutes left, so I will definitely have you on again. Is there anything that you want to say in closing, real quick? I could talk to you for like 5 hours straight.
I would ask people to read Revelations
Yes.
and learn the greatest secrets in human history.
Mm-hmm.
And I would ask them to read Rise of Human Perception to learn how to do some of these things and learn to listen with your heart. Wake up, let go of all these false beliefs because they're controlling your own reality.
The false programming.
Yeah.
Wow.
We mirror the world around us.
As within, so without, as above, so below.
Yeah. Science proved this in 1997 when they did the twin photon experiment, which brought about the knowledge of quantum entanglement. We're all linked and entangled with everything in the universe, which is exactly what the Tibetans said. You and me, we're all one consciousness, and it is impossible to harm another person without at the same time harming yourself.
Wow. Mic drop.
That's the truth. I appreciate very much you having me on, and I too will look forward to another conversation.
Yes, I feel like we just like cracked the tip of the iceberg. I really thank you so much for spending your morning with me. I really appreciated this. This and a nice cup of coffee is a great way to wake up.
Well, I've had people tell me, and this at the risk of sounding arrogant or whatever, I've had people say, Harry, you are brilliant. Even my own wife has told me that. She's smarter than I am. She doesn't know it. But I'm not even flattered by that statement. I'm seriously not even flattered because as much as I've learned, I realize, man, I don't know squat.
Yeah.
So much. Even
the most self-aware people. Like everyone's like, "Oh, you're so smart. You're so." I'm like, "Yes, but I also don't know shit." And it's. I feel like the more you learn, the more you're like, the more you know, the more you don't know.
Well, that's it. And believe me, I'm a little older than you. By a lot, I'm sure. But the older you
45 years.
Huh?
45 years.
Well, I'm a lot older than you. People say, how old do you think I am? Some people think I'm in my 50s. Some say the 60s. I'm 75 years old.
Okay, so it has been clearly established that Harrison will need to come on for a part 2 because I feel like we barely scratched the surface. And when you're very mercurial with, I have a lot of that Virgo energy. I also have Gemini energy too. I'm ruled by Gemini Mercury as my chart ruler. And Harrison, as we've talked about, has got that Gemini Sun, Moon, and Mercury. And we could just talk forever. So I hope that this episode stirred something in you. If it did, feel free to leave a comment. I'm curious about what people are thinking. There's a huge global shift happening with this Saturn Neptune conjunction that I've talked about in solo episodes. I talked about the last time Saturn and Neptune conjuncted 36 years ago in Capricorn, aligns with the falling of the Berlin Wall, for example, this disillusioned Neptune of structure, Saturn. And now with the Saturn and Neptune conjunction at the 0 point of Aries and this connotation to a quote unquote holy war. But just like I talk about with the Crusades, there's nothing holy about war. So I think that that is a giant oxymoron. And I don't know what the hell is going on in this world right now, but truth and light will prevail, and our minds can just like drive us crazy ad nauseum. This is my biggest takeaway from this hour with Harrison. I'm curious what yours is. Our mind will just like drive us crazy all the time, doing all these mental gymnastics. And it's like, can we really just listen to that still inner voice within? So I will link Harrison's books in the show notes, how to get in touch with him. And if you're interested in booking a reading with me, you can send me an email at Sarah, Sarah, dot liminal, Liminal, dot pathways at gmail.com. And I look forward to the next episode. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope that you have a great day. Bye bye.